So my wife came up with this brilliant idea. 21 days of complete honesty between us. No lies, no omissions, no sugarcoating anything. She pitched it to me over dinner one evening, eyes sparkling like she'd just discovered the secret to eternal happiness. "It'll revolutionize our marriage," she said, leaning forward with that excited energy she gets when she thinks she's on to something big. "Imagine how much stronger we'll be when we can tell each other absolutely everything." I looked at her across the table, fork halfway to my mouth. Complete honesty? In a marriage? That's either the most naive thing I'd ever heard or the most dangerous. But something in her tone made me curious. There was an edge there, hidden beneath all that enthusiasm. "All right," I said, setting down my fork. "But if we're doing this, we're really doing this. No backing out when things get uncomfortable." She nodded eagerly. Too eagerly, if you ask me. "Absolutely. Complete transparency. Starting tomorrow." The first day rolled around, and she kicked things off with a confession that she'd never actually liked my morning routine. Apparently, the way I made coffee was inefficient, and my habit of checking emails while eating breakfast was disconnecting us from quality time. Fair enough. I can handle criticism about coffee making. Day 2 brought revelations about my choice in weekend clothes. She'd been biting her tongue for months about my favorite old t-shirt, calling it raggedy and embarrassing when we go out. By day 3, I started noticing a pattern. This honesty experiment seemed to have a very specific direction. She was the one sharing all these built-up frustrations about me, while I sat there nodding and taking mental notes. When I tried to flip the script and mentioned that her habit of leaving cabinet doors open drove me crazy, she got defensive immediately. "That's not the same thing," she said. "I'm talking about things that actually matter to our connection." Interesting definition of honesty she had there. Day 4 brought her confession about a purchase she'd made 3 months ago. An expensive handbag she'd hidden in her closet, telling me the money went toward groceries. "I felt so guilty," she said, tears welling up. "But now I can finally be honest about it." I appreciated the confession, but something felt off. Why now? Why this sudden urge to come clean about a handbag she'd successfully hidden for months? "How much?" I asked. "Does it matter? The point is I'm being honest now. If we're doing complete honesty, then yes, it matters." She hesitated. 400. I nodded calmly, but I was already doing math in my head. Our grocery budget hadn't suffered that month, which meant she'd taken that money from somewhere else. But I didn't push it. Not yet. Day 5 continued the trend. More confessions about small lies she'd told, more criticism disguised as honesty about my habits, and more deflection when I tried to participate in this supposed two-way street. By the end of the first week, I realized something important. This wasn't about strengthening our marriage through mutual honesty. This was about her creating a safe space to dump all her grievances while positioning herself as the reformed truth teller. The question was, what was she really trying to hide behind all this performance of honesty? Week 2 of the honesty experiment brought heavier confessions. She sat me down on day 8 with that same serious expression she'd worn when she first pitched this whole thing. "I need to tell you about the credit card," she said, hands folded in her lap like a student confessing to cheating on a test. My eyebrows went up. "Which credit card?" "The one I opened 6 months ago. For emergencies." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I've used it a few times for things we needed around the house." I kept my voice level. "How much is on it?" "Around 1,500. "Around 1,500. "Not exactly 1,500. "Around." That's the kind of language people use when the real number is higher and they're testing the waters. "Show me the statements," I said. Her face flushed. "I don't think we need to get into every detail. The important thing is I'm being honest about it now. If we're doing complete honesty, then yes, we need every detail." She shifted uncomfortably. "Fine, I'll get them tonight." That evening, she handed me 3 months' worth of statements. Balance was actually 2,200, not 1,500. And the purchases weren't household necessities. Spa treatments, expensive lunches, online shopping sprees. All while she'd been complaining about our tight budget. "This doesn't look like emergencies to me," I said, flipping through the pages. "Those were emotional emergencies," she shot back. "I was stressed about work, about us. Sometimes I needed to treat myself to cope." Emotional emergencies. That was a new one. "So while I've been working overtime to cover our actual emergencies, you've been having spa days to cope with stress?" Don't make me sound terrible. I'm trying to be honest here. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was trying to frame deception as honesty and somehow make me the bad guy for questioning it. Day 9 brought another revelation. She'd been talking to her sister about our marriage problems. Problems I didn't even know we had, according to her version of events. What exactly did you tell her? I asked. Just that we've been distant lately. That you've been working too much and not paying attention to my needs. When did these conversations happen? Over the past few months. She's been very supportive. Supportive of what exactly? Painting me as the neglectful husband while she racked up secret debt for spa treatments? Day 10 was when I decided to test her commitment to this honesty experiment. I asked her directly about something I already knew the answer to. Have you been in contact with anyone from your past that I should know about? She paused too long. What do you mean? Old friends, ex-boyfriends, co-workers from previous jobs? Anyone you've been talking to regularly? No, she said quickly. Why would you ask that? Interesting. Because I'd seen her texting someone named Alex quite frequently over the past month. She'd always flip her phone face down when I walked into the room, but I caught glimpses of the name. Just curious. You know, complete honesty and all. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She was calculating something. That night, I noticed she took her phone with her to the bathroom. She'd never done that before. When she came back, she seemed more relaxed. Day 11 brought what she called her biggest confession yet. She'd been feeling disconnected from our marriage for months and had been questioning whether we were right for each other. But this honesty experiment is helping me see things more clearly, she added quickly. I think we can work through this. How convenient. Create a problem, then position yourself as the solution. I was starting to see the real game here. This wasn't about honesty at all. This was about control. She was confessing to smaller lies to build credibility for bigger ones. She was airing grievances to justify behavior I hadn't discovered yet. And she was testing my reactions to see how much she could get away with. The question was, what was she building up to reveal? Or more importantly, what was she working so hard to keep hidden? Because if there's one thing I'd learned in 12 days of complete honesty, it's that the loudest truth tellers are usually the ones with the biggest secrets. Day 12 arrived with her most dramatic confession yet. She'd been having regular coffee meetings with someone I'd never heard of. A guy from her yoga class who'd become what she called a really good friend. His name is David, she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. We've been meeting every Wednesday for the past 2 months. Just talking. He's going through a divorce and needed someone to listen. David, not Alex. Interesting how the name had changed. Wednesday mornings? I asked. When you told me you were running errands? Yes. She looked down at her hands. I knew you'd misunderstand if I told you about him. Men don't get friendships like this. Men don't get friendships like this. Right. Because we're too primitive to understand the deep emotional connection that requires secrecy and lies. What do you talk about during these coffee sessions? His divorce. His feelings. Sometimes our marriages come up. She looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes. It's just nice to have someone who listens without judging. Without judging. As opposed to her husband, who apparently judges everything. How did this friendship start? He approached me after class one day. Said I seemed like someone he could trust with his problems. Classic. The vulnerable divorced guy who just needed someone to talk to. And my wife, being the caring soul she is, couldn't possibly say no to someone in need. Does he know you're married? Of course he knows. I talk about you sometimes. Sometimes. Not all the time. Just sometimes. Day 13 brought more details about David, the divorced yoga guy. Apparently, he'd been going through a tough time with his ex-wife, who was being unreasonable about custody arrangements. My wife had been providing emotional support and advice. You're like a therapist to this guy, I said. I'm just being a good friend. Something you might not understand since you don't have many close friendships. There it was. Another little dig disguised as honesty. I don't have close friendships because I'm emotionally unavailable, according to her narrative. Day 14 was when I decided to run my first real test. Speaking of friendships, I said casually over dinner, remember when you used to work with that guy Marcus? Whatever happened to him? She froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Marcus? Why are you asking about him? Just curious. You two seemed pretty close back then. We were just co-workers. I haven't talked to him in years. Lie number 1. I'd seen her commenting on his social media posts just last week. What about that conference you went to in Chicago last year? Did you run into anyone you knew there? Another pause. No, just attended the sessions and came home. Lie number 2. She'd posted photos with several people, including one tagged as dinner with old friends. And that work party you went to last month? The one where you came home so late. It ran longer than expected. You know how these corporate things go. Lie number 3. She told me it ended at 8, but her location showed her at a bar until after midnight. Each question was a trap, and she was walking right into every one. The beautiful thing about liars is they forget what they've said to whom. They create so many versions of the truth that they lose track of which story they're supposed to be telling. Day 15 brought her confession about feeling emotionally neglected in our marriage. She'd been having deeper conversations with David about what she needed from a relationship. He helps me understand my own feelings, she explained. He's very emotionally intelligent. Emotionally intelligent. Unlike her husband, presumably. What kind of understanding has he helped you reach? That I deserve to feel heard and appreciated. That my needs matter too. Right. Because nothing says emotional intelligence like encouraging a married woman to focus on what she's not getting from her husband. Day 16 was when she made her biggest mistake yet. David thinks I should consider couples therapy for us, she said. He's been through it during his divorce and has some insights. David thinks we need therapy? He just wants what's best for me. For us. A divorced guy she'd been secretly meeting was now giving advice about our marriage. And she was presenting this as if it made perfect sense. Has David met me? I asked. Well, no, but I've told him about you. So he's giving marriage advice about a man he's never met, based on stories told by a woman who's been lying to her husband about meeting him? Her face flushed. It's not like that. What's it like then? She couldn't answer, because there was no good answer. She'd painted herself into a corner, and we both knew it. That night, I made my decision. If she wanted to play games with honesty, I'd show her how the game was really played. Day 17 started like any other morning. She made her usual coffee, scrolled through her phone, and prepared for another day of her honesty experiment. What she didn't know was that I'd already done some investigating of my own. The night before, after she'd gone to bed, I'd taken a closer look at our phone bill. Amazing what you can discover when you actually pay attention to the details. David from yoga class had been getting a lot more than Wednesday coffee conversations. Text messages at all hours. Phone calls that lasted over an hour. Some as late as 11 at night. But the real discovery came when I checked our joint credit card statement more carefully. Remember that emotional emergency spending she'd confessed to? Well, there were charges I hadn't noticed before. 2 charges to the same restaurant on consecutive Wednesdays. Both for 2 meals. So much for solo spa days and retail therapy. Day 18 brought her usual morning confession routine, but this time I was ready. I've been thinking about what you said about David. I started, keeping my tone casual. It's nice that you found such a good friend. She brightened up, probably thinking I was finally accepting her new friendship. He really is wonderful. So understanding. Those Wednesday coffee meetings must be pretty intense. What coffee shop do you usually go to? Oh, we've tried a few different places. You know, to mix it up. Like restaurants. She paused. Sometimes we grab lunch instead of coffee. Depends on our schedules. Interesting. Coffee had become lunch. And lunch apparently required hiding it from me. That's nice. Which restaurants? Another pause. I don't remember the names. Just casual places. She didn't remember. The same woman who could recall every detail of a conversation from 3 years ago suddenly couldn't remember where she'd been eating lunch every week for 2 months. Well, I'm sure they're good if you keep going back to the same ones. We don't go to the same ones. We like to explore. Wrong answer. The credit card said otherwise. That evening, I decided to share some honesty of my own. You know, this experiment has been really eye-opening, I said over dinner. See, I told you it would bring us closer together. It has. In fact, it's helped me understand things I never noticed before. She smiled, completely missing the edge in my voice. Like how easy it is to lie while claiming to be honest. Her smile faltered. What do you mean? I mean David from yoga class. The one you've been having coffee with on Wednesdays. I told you about him. I'm being honest about our friendship. Are you being honest about the hour-long phone calls with him? The ones that happen after I go to bed. Her face went pale. How do you? Were the restaurant charges on our credit card? 2 meals every Wednesday for the past 8 weeks. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since this honesty experiment started, she had nothing to say. Here's what I find fascinating, I continued. You've spent 18 days confessing to small lies and old secrets, positioning yourself as this reformed truth teller. Meanwhile, you've been lying about something happening right now, every single week. It's not what you think. What do I think? That there's something inappropriate going on. There isn't. We're just friends. Friends who lie about where they meet. Friends who have secret phone conversations. Friends who hide their relationship from their spouses. She was scrambling now. You're twisting everything. This is exactly why I didn't tell you the full details. You're making it sound like something it's not. Then explain what it is. He's going through a difficult divorce. He needs support. I'm just being a good friend. By lying to your husband about it. I wasn't lying. I told you about our coffee meetings. You told me about coffee meetings. You didn't mention the restaurant dinners, the late-night phone calls, or the fact that you've been playing marriage counselor to a divorced man who's giving you advice about our relationship. She stood up from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. You're acting paranoid and controlling. Paranoid and controlling. The classic deflection. When caught in a lie, attack the person who discovered it. Show me your phone, I said calmly. Excuse me. If this friendship is as innocent as you claim, show me your conversations with David. I'm not showing you my private conversations. That's an invasion of privacy. Privacy? During our 21 days of complete honesty. She realized the trap she'd walked into. How do you claim privacy while promoting transparency? How do you refuse to prove innocence while demanding trust? That's different. Those are personal conversations between friends. More personal than the conversations between us. Your husband? She didn't have an answer for that either. Day 19 arrived with a new development. She deleted her text conversations with David. All of them. When I asked about it, she claimed her phone was running out of storage space. But here's the thing about people who lie. They always underestimate how much other people notice. And I'd been noticing everything for the past 3 weeks. The real question wasn't what she was hiding anymore. The real question was how long she thought she could keep hiding it. Day 19 was when I stopped playing defense and went on the offensive. She deleted her messages, thinking that would end the conversation. What she didn't realize was that I'd already gathered enough information to bury her story 6 feet deep. But I wasn't going to confront her with everything at once. That would be too easy. Instead, I decided to use her own honesty experiment against her. If she wanted to play games with the truth, I'd show her what strategic questioning really looked like. I've been thinking about your friendship with David, I said that morning, pouring my coffee with deliberate casualness. She tensed immediately. What about it? Well, since we're being completely honest with each other, I'm curious about something. You said he approached you after yoga class because you seemed trustworthy, right? Yes. How many other people from your class know about his divorce situation? She hesitated. I don't know. We don't really discuss personal things as a group. So he singled you out specifically to confide in. I guess so. Some people are just good at reading others. Interesting. And when did his divorce finalize? Another pause. I'm not sure of the exact date. But you said he's going through a divorce. Present tense. So it's ongoing. Yes, it's complicated. How complicated? Why are you interrogating me about this? I'm not interrogating. I'm just trying to understand your friendship better. You know, complete honesty and all. She couldn't argue with that logic without contradicting her own experiment. His wife is being difficult about the settlement, he said finally. What kind of difficulties? Money, custody, the usual divorce stuff. Must be expensive, fighting a contested divorce. Good thing he has coffee money to spare for weekly meetings with you. Her eyes flashed with irritation. It's just coffee. And lunch. You mentioned lunch yesterday. Sometimes lunch, yes. At the same restaurant 8 times in a row? She froze. How could you possibly know that? Credit card statements don't lie. Unlike people. That evening, I decided to test another part of her story. You know what's been bothering me about David? I said during dinner. What now? You said he gives you marriage advice based on his divorce experience, right? He offers perspective, yes. But if his own marriage failed, what makes him qualified to advise on ours? He learned from his mistakes. What mistakes were those? I don't know all the details. But you trust his advice about our relationship without knowing why his failed. She was getting frustrated, which meant she was running out of prepared answers. Not everything has to be analyzed to death, she snapped. You're right. Some things are pretty obvious when you pay attention. Day 20 brought the final test. I called her at work around noon. Hey, just checking in. How's your day going? Fine. Busy. What's up? Nothing major. Just wanted to hear your voice. What are you up to this afternoon? Just work stuff. Meetings, paperwork, you know. Any plans after work? No. I'll probably head straight home. Sounds good. See you tonight. What she didn't know was that I'd already checked her location. She wasn't at work. She was at the same restaurant where she'd been meeting David every Wednesday. On a Thursday, the Wednesday meetings had expanded to other days of the week, and she'd just lied about it directly, without hesitation. That evening, she came home acting completely normal. Kissed me hello, asked about my day, made dinner conversation like nothing had happened. How was work today? I asked. Exhausting. Back-to-back meetings all afternoon. Rough. Did you get lunch at least? Just grabbed something quick at my desk. Lie after lie, delivered with the same innocent expression she'd been wearing for 3 weeks while lecturing me about honesty. You know what's funny? I said, setting down my fork. What? This whole honesty experiment has really opened my eyes. I'm so glad you're seeing the value in it. Oh, I am. I'm learning things I never would have discovered otherwise. Like what? Like how someone can lie constantly while convincing themselves they're being honest. Her smile faded. What are you trying to say? I'm saying your experiment is working perfectly, just not the way you planned. I don't understand. You will tomorrow. Day 21 is going to be very educational. She stared at me across the table, probably trying to figure out what I knew and how much trouble she was in. The beautiful thing about cornering a liar is watching them realize their web of deception is about to collapse. Is there something you want to ask me? She said carefully. Actually, yes. There is one thing I'm curious about. What? When this whole honesty experiment is over tomorrow, are you planning to tell me the truth about David? Or are you going to keep pretending Wednesday coffee meetings are the extent of your relationship? She went completely still. For the first time in 20 days, she had no quick answer, no deflection, no counterattack. Because here's the thing about complete honesty, I continued. It only works when both people are actually being honest. And we both know that hasn't been happening here. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. She knew I knew. I knew she knew I knew. The only question left was whether she'd finally tell the truth or dig herself deeper into the hole she'd been creating for 3 weeks. Tomorrow would give us both our answer. Day 21 arrived with the kind of tension you could cut with a knife. She'd barely slept the night before. I could feel her tossing and turning, probably rehearsing whatever story she was planning to tell me. I got up early and made coffee for both of us. When she came downstairs, she looked like someone preparing for battle. So, she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Today's the last day of our experiment. It is indeed. I think it's been really good for us. Has it? She nodded, but her hands were shaking slightly as she lifted her coffee cup. We've learned so much about communication and trust. We certainly have. The silence stretched between us. She was waiting for me to make the first move, probably hoping I'd let everything slide now that the experiment was officially ending. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. Before we wrap this up, I have something to share with you. You know, in the spirit of complete honesty. Her eyes fixed on the phone like it was a loaded weapon. Yesterday, when you told me you were working late and had back-to-back meetings all afternoon, I was curious about something. What? So I checked our phone's family location sharing. You know, the feature we set up for emergencies? The color drained from her face. According to this, you weren't at work yesterday afternoon. You were at Romano's restaurant from 12:30 to 3:15. The same restaurant where you've been meeting David every Wednesday for 2 months. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. But here's what really caught my attention. I continued, swiping to another screen. You've been there on Tuesdays too. And Thursdays. In fact, you've been meeting David 4 times a week for the past month. I can explain. Can you? Because I'm genuinely curious how you explain lying about your whereabouts while running an honesty experiment. She tried a different approach. You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. You're the one who wanted complete transparency, remember? I swiped to another screen on my phone. I also did some research on David. Interesting guy. Turns out he's not actually divorced. Her face went completely white. He's separated. Has been for 6 months. And according to his social media, which he hasn't bothered to make private, he's been quite active in the dating scene. That's not, he told me. He told you what you wanted to hear. Just like you've been telling me what you thought I wanted to hear. I leaned back in my chair, watching her scramble for an explanation that didn't exist. Here's what I think happened, I said calmly. You started this honesty experiment as cover for an affair. You figured if you confessed to small lies and old secrets, it would make you seem trustworthy. Meanwhile, you were planning to gradually introduce David into our conversations as just a friend. It's not an affair. What would you call secret meetings 4 times a week with a married man who's actively dating other women? We haven't. We're not. You're not what? Physical? Emotional? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been having an emotional affair for months while lecturing me about honesty. She started crying then. Not the gentle tears of remorse, but the ugly crying of someone whose world was falling apart. I never meant for this to happen, she sobbed. Which part? The lying, the cheating, or getting caught? I was lonely. You're always working, always tired. David made me feel interesting again. So, instead of talking to your husband about feeling lonely, you decided to find another man to make you feel better? It wasn't supposed to go this far. How far was it supposed to go? Where exactly did you draw the line in your mind? She couldn't answer because there had been no line. She'd been sliding down a slope of deception and justification, telling herself whatever she needed to hear to keep going. The real kicker, I said, is that you convinced yourself you were being honest. You actually believed that confessing to old lies somehow balanced out the new ones you were creating. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry for lying, or sorry for getting caught? Both. I don't know. I'm confused. Let me help clear up the confusion. This marriage is over. She looked up at me through her tears. What? You heard me. I'm done. But we can work through this. Couples therapy, like David suggested. The irony was breathtaking. She wanted to fix our marriage using advice from the man she'd been cheating with. David suggested couples therapy because he wanted you to focus on what was wrong with our marriage instead of what was wrong with your choices. Classic manipulation. He's not manipulating me. He's a separated man who's dating multiple women while convincing a married woman that her husband doesn't understand her. What would you call that? She had no answer for that either. I stood up from the table and looked down at her. 21 days of complete honesty. You were right about one thing. It was educational. I learned exactly who I'm married to. Please don't do this. We can fix it. No, we can't. Because you don't even understand what's broken. I headed toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. David's wife filed for divorce yesterday. It's public record. Guess what the grounds were? She stared at me with wide eyes. Adultery. Turns out you weren't his first married woman. You were just the most convenient. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. She'd thought she was special. She'd thought she was different. She'd thought she was the exception to every rule about cheating and lies and consequences. She was wrong about that too. I walked out of the house that morning and never looked back. 21 days of complete honesty had taught me everything I needed to know about my marriage, my wife, and myself. Sometimes the truth really does set you free.